seconds.
All right. Welcome to the webinar hosted by Catholic Investment Services. Thank you for joining us today. Our topic is investment opportunities ahead and governance best practices for embracing them. My name is Jeremy Taylor, and I'm privileged to serve as Managing Director for Catholic Investment Services. I grew up in Niceville, Florida, part of the Diocese of Pensacola, Tallahassee, and I am honored to serve the Florida Catholic community for CIS. My colleague Zayla Astarjian, who has done a great job organizing this program, is at the Zoom control panel. Enormous thanks to our Hall of Fame panel, who you will meet shortly. Today's format will be conversational, and I will act as moderator. Our hope is to have a dynamic conversation with audience questions fielded throughout the program. So please use the Q&A feature on your Zoom screen to submit a question. Our audience is muted and all is being recorded. Catholic Investment Services was founded by some of the investment industry's most respected leaders to address the investment challenges faced by Catholic organizations. We are a Catholic nonprofit serving other Catholic nonprofits and hope this webinar provides some useful take-home value. You received biographical information for our speakers, but I wanted to add a few additional comments. CIS co-founder and current board chair, Scott Malpass, recently retired as Chief Investment Officer at the University of Notre Dame, where for 32 years he was responsible investing the university's endowment and other assets of over $14 billion. Notre Dame's endowment is the 7th largest private university endowment in American higher education and the largest at a Catholic university. Institutional Investor magazine has called Scott an investment titan and MVP, and he certainly is all of that and more for CIS. Notre Dame legend Bill Fenton is a senior director for planned giving at Cross Catholic Outreach in Boca Raton, Florida. Prior to Cross Catholic, Bill served as VP of Advancement at Barry University. Bill has acted as a capital campaign consultant for several Catholic nonprofits and currently serves as the president of the Notre Dame Alumni Club of Boca Raton, as well as the treasurer of the Order of Malta, South Florida region. Before our program begins, please join us in a short prayer that Bill will lead.
Let us pray. Dear Lord, giver of life and source of all goodness, we thank you for our many blessings of time, talent, and treasure that you have bestowed upon us. Gracious and loving God, we understand that you call us to be the stewards of your abundance and the caretakers of all that you have entrusted to us. Bless us with your guidance and wisdom. Help us always to use your gifts prudently and teach us to share them generously. May our faithful stewardship bear witness to the love of Christ in our lives and in the missions of the institutions and organizations that we represent throughout Florida. We pray this with grateful hearts in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
All right, well, thanks again to our exceptional panel, and maybe we can get going. Bill, can you share with us a little more about Cross Catholic, your organization, its mission, and maybe some of the challenges and opportunities you guys faced throughout the pandemic last year?
Sure. Well, thank you, Jeremy and Zayla, and it's always a pleasure to be with Scott. Scott and I go back many years, and I'm sure that will come out in the conversation today. But Cross Catholic Outreach is a great organization. I'm pleased to be a part of Cross. I started the planned giving program here several years ago. Our mission is to provide material and spiritual assistance to the poorest of the poor worldwide. And we do this through raising money throughout the United States, primarily through our network of about 60 retired priests who preach at weekend masses at parishes across the country. We then provide direct assistance through cash grants and in-kind support to the priests and nuns who are doing God's work as missionaries in underdeveloped countries around the world. So that's our kind of a snapshot of who we are and what we do. And obviously, throughout this pandemic, it's been a challenge for us, along with other nonprofits throughout Florida and throughout the country. The churches, the parishes have been shut down or greatly restricted in terms of attendance, and that has impacted us in terms of how we are able to raise money and awareness. And so it has had an impact on us. Thankfully, our significant donors have mostly stepped up and helped to bring in the funds necessary for us to continue our mission at our present pace. So we're thinking that we're in good shape at this point. And my role, of course, in planned giving is to look towards the future. And this is what we're continuing to try to do. So I'm anxious to get back out on the road again. I've been on Zoom, I think, more times than I've been in Miami, and I'm looking forward to getting out on the road again and visiting our donors in person and trying to get back into the swing of things.
That's excellent. For the audience, you've had a very long relationship with Scott, and we're really part of the catalyst for our organization to be formed. Can you share with the audience sort of the conversation, the story that you've had with Scott many, many years ago?
Sure. I jokingly say that Scott formed CIS because he was tired of me asking questions about how come he couldn't open up the Notre Dame endowment to have Catholic organizations be a part of the Notre Dame endowment. And so this goes back to when I was on the Notre Dame alumni board, and I would be on campus fairly regularly, and I would always look for Scott, and usually I would run into him because he would be there making a presentation, as he always does. He's in front of all sorts of groups, as you know, and usually I would just come across him naturally. But if for some reason I didn't see him, I would seek him out, and I would always ask the question that why couldn't Notre Dame do what inevitably what Scott did with leading the charge to create Catholic Investment Services. So I look back on those days, and I'm very fortunate that what Scott did was really create what was the best of both worlds. He created an organization that I truly believe, as in my role, that CIS is set up to provide the type of assistance that an organization my size would be looking for, that is a great fit because of the Catholic characteristics and especially the Catholic values. I've been fortunate over the years to have spent the bulk of my career here in the state of Florida, really for about the past 30 years. I've been involved not just in cross-Catholic outreach, but I've been the Chief Development Officer or Capital Campaign Consultant, as you noted earlier, Jeremy, with several Catholic institutions or organizations in Florida, Barry University in Miami, Holy Cross Hospital in Fort Lauderdale, Cardinal Newman High School in West Palm Beach, and the Catholic Foundation of Central Florida, which is the fundraising arm of the Diocese of Orlando. So I've had the opportunity to be involved with a number of Catholic organizations and institutions around the state. And I can just tell you that from my vantage point, CIS is a perfect fit for the types of organizations that I've worked with and that I've seen looking for some type of investment and management situation where this would be a good fit. So Catholic Investment Services came along at the right time, and I think is a great fit for the institutions here in Florida that I've had the fortune to work with.
Scott, do you want to take us away with some of the challenge opportunities you've seen, and maybe what led you to create our organization?
Yeah, well, first of all, I want to thank Bill. Bill has been a collaborator with me in a lot of different things, and what an exemplar of service to our faith that he has been. So it's a privilege to be with Bill today. We were also inducted into the Order of Malta together in New York City, which is So we have a long history together. And so thank you, Bill, for all of that. You know, I will say it really was people like Bill that prompted us to give this serious consideration. I had been getting calls from dioceses. Can you please look at my investment portfolio? We'd love to get your advice. Could you be on our investment committee? You know, could we invest with you? Of course, I couldn't be on everybody's investment committee. and there were legal and tax impediments and capacity issues related to managers that prevented us from taking such a broad group. We later did take in the Holy Cross institutions into our pool, but limited to that. So we needed to find a solution for everybody else, particularly, smaller, meaning, we can handle any size, but we really wanted to make sure those who really didn't have any options, to really have a great product that had the Catholic screens with access to the best managers. So we really decided, look, there's very few people who could really do this. As all of you know out there, the amount of Catholic product has increased. It's a wonderful thing. There really wasn't much in 2014 when we started this. There were a few things, and those were fine, but the performance wasn't particularly good. But they had some screening, which was great. But we really want to do something that really focused on both, that really did have access to the very best managers and investment minds, and still with the Catholic screens, if you will. So that's what we set out to do. And we haven't wavered from that. I've been very pleased with the performance, the kind of access we've had. My team at Notre Dame has been very helpful to Tiff, who's our sub-advisor in asset allocation, on manager selection, on manager ideas, great collaboration. Several of the managers in the portfolio were partners of Notre Dame's, for example. And so we've been off and running. We started with a long-term asset pool, Catholic Endowment Fund. We felt that was the immediate solution we wanted to offer. Then that could apply to a whole range of institutions. And then we added a private equity offering. We have a second fund coming out there. And now more recently, we've added a couple of sleeves in global equities and in diversifiers, which is hedge fund related strategies, something that several Catholic organizations had mentioned they would love to have more access to. But again, the Catholic screens make it hard for them, and they don't really have access to the best managers. And believe me, as someone who did a lot of alternative investing, you do not want to be with the bad managers in those spaces, not even the average ones, because they're not good, and you have risk losing a lot of money. So we've tried to keep this simple, quality, and have a really quality offering in the Catholic tradition. So that's where we've started, and we've gotten great traction. And our team at CIS has done a fabulous job. We've substituted webinars for in-person meetings the last year, but it's been fun to do. So we're going to keep doing it.
Excellent. 2020 presented some unique opportunities and some unique challenges for Catholic institutions. Can you talk about sort of the plan? What happened last year? How did communication change? What did your team do as we sort of entered through the crisis, and maybe expand a little bit about what we learned?
Yeah, so I've certainly been through many crises in the markets during my career. I mean, if you really look at it, there's some sort of crisis every 4 or 5 years. Now, nothing necessarily on the order of the global financial crisis or COVID, but we had the peso devaluation, we had the Asian problems and with currencies, we had 9/11, we've had a number of things, and I've looked at over time. It's like every 4 years or something. I almost set my alarm to it, and okay, something's going to happen, But it also, even this year, 2020, we had such dramatic swings in the market. The volatility was incredible. For me, it just continues to emphasize why you want professional management, why you want discipline, why you want to have a governance structure that's well run, a good investment process, a real sense of what we're trying to achieve here and why. And those guardrails and that discipline, it keeps you from doing the wrong things. I just can't tell you how many more individuals, retail, I know, who got out of the market in March last year. And of course, the market is up multiples from there. I mean, it's incredible, the rebound. And now with the vaccine, They're talking about a 6% plus GDP growth in the United States, a massive recovery in the second half of the year, and the markets are reflecting that. For me, it was just another reminder of discipline, having a long-term plan and sticking to it. For my team at Notre Dame, of course, you have more communication with managers. We had more sort of sessions to stay on top of things. You know, who knows when you're in free fall, you don't know what's going to happen. You know, so you just want to over communicate. We were getting ideas from some of our managers were saying, hey, our stocks are way down. They're great companies. They're cheap. We're taking capital now to invest more money. That's something Warren Buffett always talks about. He loves it when the market goes down because he can buy his great names cheaper, you know, and he's not selling them. So in a way, that's our mentality, but that requires discipline and then knowing that that's what you're going to do. And you don't necessarily go all in at those times, but there are going to be select investment opportunities you're going to take advantage of as you monitor the situation. It was a tough time for investors. Not only were they dealing with the markets, they're dealing with personal health issues. Very unusual crisis. You know, it's not like it was just a market thing. This was a pandemic that affected people's lives, and tragically in many cases. So people who were investing and handling charitable money, they were dealing with a lot last year. So it was a tough time. But if you have that discipline in place, at least that part of it, you know, with professional management should go well.
Excellent. Bill, can you talk about maybe some of the challenges that Cross Catholic faced during the year last year, and maybe you know, some of the discipline or principles that were put in place to you know, and ultimately endure the pandemic?
Yeah, well, as I mentioned, we depend primarily on priests that are out there preaching at parishes around the country for our first line of fundraising. And so with the shutdown of Catholic churches throughout the country, that impacted what we could do. And so we had to do a double take and come up with some other means of reaching donors. And so we utilized more phone calls, Zoom calls, direct mail. We got into other methods of communicating with our known donors, and so we were able to ramp that up quite a bit to lessen the shortfall that we saw from the outreach priests. So that helped us a lot, and I think like any organization, you know, we learned a lot. We stretched ourselves. We came up with some things to do that we would not probably have normally attempted to do because the situation warranted it. So we were able to look at some alternative ways of trying to reach donors, and I think we were pretty effective in doing so. And at the same time, like I said earlier, I'm anxious to get out and meet with our folks in person, our donors and prospective donors. But you know, I've learned to be able to be more creative in communicating with them over this past year and building the communication bridges more effectively in some cases. So it's been a learning curve for us, and I'm sure for other organizations. And so I'm glad we're coming out of the pandemic. And I know that we discussed earlier how great Zoom is, and I don't think Zoom will ever go away. But who would have thought that Zoom would be the way it is now a year ago? So there are certain things that will probably stay with us when this pandemic ends. But again, I'm old school. I like to be in front of people face to face as much as possible.
Excellent. So a lot of the United States is starting to receive vaccinations. I know my parents got their vaccination and booked a cruise like a week or two later. Can you kind of talk through the current environment, Scott, and maybe the road ahead, what we'll see, you know, throughout this year and maybe into 2022?
Yeah, thanks. I was thinking about every day. I think about these things, but it has been an unusual time when you go back to the 2008 with the housing crisis, you know, and what turned out to be a massive financial crisis globally. And the amount of artificial stimulation we've had in the markets, the massive quantitative easing. I think we had 4 trillion in the US at that time. The amount of fiscal stimulus and special programs, the TARP program to save the banks, which actually did a good job. For example, Europe never did sort of a TARP program, and their banks have never recovered. That's part of the problem in Europe. They still aren't providing enough credit, and they're not as healthy as the U.S. banks. So a lot of artificial stuff, and then you move forward. Now you have COVID, and the economy tanks. A lot of sectors were severely hit. Hospitality, transportation, all service, restaurants. So that was a depression in a lot of those sectors, right? So again, more liquidity in the markets, more borrowing, more leverage, more fiscal stimulus. I mean, we're talking about, we've had trillions of financing now, and now we have an infrastructure plan. It's going to be another potentially 2 or 3 trillion. And not that a lot of that isn't needed or helpful, it's a lot. And so my worry longer term is, how do you hide, $12 trillion of funding globally over the last year? I mean, it's hard to hide that. So rates have crept up a little bit, which I think is healthy. I think having a reasonable level of interest rates, there should be some time value of money, and savers should get something on that. So I think that's healthy. I don't see, there's a lot of talk of inflation, and actually Warren Buffett talked about this at his annual meeting over the weekend. They are seeing some pricing power in a lot of their companies, but it's sort of a reflation, I'd say more. I'm not worried about rampant inflation at this point. I think we'll have a strong rebound, but then there'll be some normalization. And the offset to inflation is innovation and productivity and technology. This is one of the reasons we haven't had inflation. I mean, there's been pressure on wages going down, employment, et cetera. So innovation's here to stay. It's remarkable what we've done in our country in terms of innovation, technological. Now, more recently, you're seeing accelerating innovation in biotech, in pharma, in gene therapies, a lot of stuff going on. We have a fantastic entrepreneurial culture in this country, and that's gotten stronger and stronger. And so that's going to drive new company formation, investment opportunities. And of course, you're also seeing a lot of that in China, which is also a very entrepreneurial culture, supporting new company formation and building some great companies as well. It's really the US and China that are really doing that the most. So look, the other thing I guess I would say, geopolitical tensions are always there, always worry me. They vary in which region of the world, and of course now, we have a competitor in China in terms of, particularly in Asia, and we're always having to deal with the Russians and their insecurities about their status in the world. So there's always that, but you know what? That's been the case, in history, all through history. So it's not new. I like the tone President Biden's setting. We can all argue about individual policies and everything, but I just do feel the tone is better. It feels like a serious effort to get some things done and have a more professional outreach to our partners in the world and even to our adversaries. And, we'll ultimately see how it all plays out and what the record is. But I think this approach where you're talking to people in a more civil way, I think, I'm hoping that actually bears some dividends for us. So there's a lot to worry about, and we're not going to solve it on this call. But again, for me, managing the Notre Dame endowment all these years, I just felt good about the quality of our assets. We had a great governance structure, a great committee, very disciplined approach. We had a great team, and we followed our playbook in good times and bad. And when we saw opportunities, we took advantage of it. So I think that's really the message here. We don't know what's going to happen, but we know there will be things that are difficult, and we're going to have to ride through those things. But we also don't want to panic and undermine our financial stability long term by making foolish investment decisions.
Catholic institutions and many of the committees that Zayla and I engage with show sort of a traditional footprint on the investments, 60-40 type model. That 40% has really found itself in a very low yielding environment. Can you speak to different ways or what institutions are doing as a sort of are trapped in this low yield environment, and what other opportunities might be out there for that 40% of the endowment?
Yeah, it's a good question because, I've always believed in having some fixed income as an offset to equity risk, right? For most institutions, we were able to do other things in bonds because of the nature of our endowment and the staff. But, when equities go down or there's a crisis in equity markets, the best asset historically has been fixed income. The problem today, Jeremy, that you're alluding to is that rates are so low. And so debt doesn't look cheap. I mean, if rates go up, of course, bond prices go down. So now they'll reset and there'll be different coupons over time, but that adjustment can take time. So what we've decided at Catholic Investment Services is to offer some diversifying assets. So offer Catholic institutions a chance to invest in private equity, for example. And we have an outstanding impact investing fund that we partnered with Hamilton Lane on. I really am impressed with what they're doing in the first fund, the kind of companies they're supporting that are very socially progressive, but also, financially good stewardship. We're going to make money on them. We have to have both. Our second fund is going to even do more of that. And by the way, I was always asked at Notre Dame, now we always had the social screens based on the bishop's guidelines. We've always had that, and it gets somewhere an exclusionary approach. But over time, as more socially leaning projects came forward that also had a really strong financial aspect where you could really get paid for them, we wanted to do more forward thinking, more progressive investing and impact type projects. And there's just more funds available now to do that, including in renewables and different areas that I think are very positive. And to me, it wasn't a political issue. It was I had a stewardship responsibility and a fiduciary duty. But at Notre Dame, if I could always find something that could help us make money for our students and financial aid and our excellent faculty, or the band or the glee club, you name it, everybody has an endowment, or our clubs that Bill ran, our Boca Club, to help them with their assistance and local students. I had to make a financial return to help these great works. But if I could also support some really great companies that are doing some really positive social things, to me, that was very good. So we're offering that. So yeah, I think some of the alternatives give us a solution there to offset some of the concerns about bonds going forward, given how expensive they look because rates are so low. I think that's really where people need to be looking.
Bill, can we talk about, maybe we'll pivot and shift gears a little bit and talk about governance, talk about finance or investment committees. Can you share your experience across the committee that you put in place? What resonates with committee members, sort of the structure that's in place, and how important that is?
Yeah, I think, depending upon the institution, you're going to have different models for how many folks you have and what their levels of expertise would be. So that varies from institution to institution. But just listening to what Scott has said is a perfect example of why it's a wise move to choose CIS. Frankly, we're talking about boards that are connected with Catholic institutions and organizations around Florida and around the country that have been attracted to the institution for a variety of reasons. And so when you're able to look at it and say, when you have a donor, a current donor or a prospective donor that says, I'm interested in providing some significant funds to your organization, and whatever that might happen to be for your organization, whether it's $1 million or $10 million or $100 million, whatever it is, whatever is significant. And then they ask the question, what are you going to do with this? How are you going to invest this? What strategy are you going to use? Well, when we're able to say, well, we've been partnering with Catholic Investment Services, and if you haven't heard about them, here's who they are, here's who the players are, and here's their level of expertise. And these are the folks that we have been partnering with for managing and investing our significant funds. And if you would join us, we would be most likely putting those resources with Catholic Investment Services. When I've done that, our donors have been most pleased because there is a plan. It is not a, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Give us your money and then we'll figure out what might be a good way of investing it to meet your needs. So, I think what Catholic Investment Services has done for us and can do for other Catholic organizations here in Florida is to be able to proactively answer that question that the prospective or current donor would have on, how are you investing the money? And, what can, I want to be able to deal with the organization through, trust and confidence. And you have all that in spades with Catholic Investment Services. So I look at the way in which institutions are set up, no matter what their sizes are, no matter how they're comprised, at the end of the day, the donors want to know, what's my trust level and what's my confidence level that my donation is going to make an impact on your mission as an organization, and how can you show me that that you're going to be able to be good stewards of these dollars? And with our relationship with Catholic Investment Services, we've been able to answer that question and not have that be an issue.
Great.
That's excellent. Maybe we'll continue on the governance and the investment committee best practice theme and think about, what types of committee members, what makes the best committee members? Are they passionate people? Are they finance or lawyers? Are they professionals? What have you seen in your experience that that really makes a good investment committee, Bill?
I've seen a variety of those, Jeremy. I've seen folks who have all that type of experience, and also common sense. I've seen small groups and large groups. I think, frankly, sometimes the larger committees can be unwieldy, but to each their own. But I've seen a smaller group of folks that can bring to the table the level of expertise that you really need to guide the organization. And however you might define that, and people bring different talents to the table, of course. But I've seen it in my judgment, a smaller group and a group that has kind of a broader level of expertise, I've found to be, I think, the most engaging, and the ones that would probably have the best interest of the organization at heart.
Yeah, I really agree with that. I think that's well said. I have found the best ones have, a very established set of rules and policies, investment authority guidelines, a real structure around the committee, having a dedicated committee. Too often you have committees trying to do too much. Investing is a unique discipline. It's very different than finance, for example. I remember years ago at Notre Dame, we had the investment and finance committee, and but it was 90% investing, and then the budget, which was small then, like 400 million. Now it's $1.5 billion. And we didn't issue debt, so there's no reason to have finance, thing. So kind of looked at the budget, and then Father Joyce would hand out the budget, and everybody look at it and he'd collect it. Nobody's allowed to see it again, So it's just kind of it didn't get the proper attention. That changed, of course, over time. And we split the committee into two specialized groups, and now they're both very busy, of course, and a lot going on. So I think you want a dedicated committee with a strong chair, who really understands institutional investing, long-term institutional investing. It's not retail, and some people who do retail advising, like a local financial advisor, some are very good at transitioning and understanding the difference, and some aren't, so some with real institutional background really helps. And then you'd like to have members of the committee have some sort of financial background. They don't all have to be investment professionals, they don't have to be running a hedge fund in New York City to be, but just some financial background is helpful. I found a lot of the best committee members I had been, honestly, commercial bankers, not investment bankers, but commercial bankers, because they understood long-term better. They understood assets and cash flow. They were lenders, so risk was important to them. And then we had investment professionals, of course, in our committee, and over time, more and more of those, and really good ones. I mean, really successful, established folks that could really help us with our program. but having some financial background is good. And then regular meetings, having a real tempo, a real rhythm to it. It's important the staff gear up for those, the discipline of that, the good communication, reviewing performance, not letting the macro environment dominate you, but certainly inform you as you move through your plan over time. And combined with Bill said, I think those are some of the key things I would highlight.
That's great. That's great. So Zayla and I, again, often come up against sort of a misperception that by constraining your portfolio, by aligning your portfolio with faith and mission, that you sacrifice returns. Scott, maybe you have probably some of the best experience in combating this misconception, but maybe you can speak about Catholic compliance, and do you sacrifice on the return side of things?
It's funny because it's complying with Catholic social teaching, and I guess primarily reflected in the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops guidelines, which was a wonderful underlying foundational document for us. And you could start with that and then go from there. Catholic social teaching is so robust, but having that foundational document was really helpful. It's so inherent in our culture and who we are. It was never something I thought of as sacrificing anything, and we more than made up for any restrictions by investing with quality managers who earned high returns in good companies, So we didn't dwell on it. It was not something we sat around and, how we would have made more this year if we had invested in these pharmaceutical names. That was never on our mind. It was just so core to who we are. We just did it, and we earned great returns because we were able to have a disciplined process, a great investment committee, a great team, a terrific brand in terms of a Catholic school, and getting access to the best managers, and having the disciplines I've mentioned. And so I know that not everybody has a team of 38 people in an investment office, but now we also have a lot of product out there, and more of it is quality than it used to be in CIS and others. And that's good to see. I'm happy there is more product for people to pick from, because they didn't have many options before. So I think now people can really take comfort. They can get good returns and be true to their values as a Catholic organization. I know, Bill, you want to add to that?
No, I think you hit the mark, Scott. I've always felt that we weren't sacrificing anything as Catholic institutions to adhere to what the bishops have been preaching for a long time. And as you've noted, it can be not just what's restricted, but what can be promoted from the Catholic side as well. So I think it's not something that we shy away from. I think it's something that we should embrace and make sure that that's front and center as part of what are the reasons why we should be invested in Catholic investment services, because we take that at face value straight up.
The Holy Father has talked about, at least to the board of the Institute for the Works of the Religion, otherwise known as the Vatican Bank, he's talked to us about how money must serve. And so it isn't just about earning high returns. It's about being good stewards and good stewardship, but also that money must serve these great purposes. So it's that nice balance, and I think that's a nice way to think about it. Money must serve, and that does incorporate that idea of a fiduciary duty, as well as supporting underlying causes. And so that I think of that a lot as well.
I know many of us are waiting to see an update and a rewrite of the USCCB guidelines, and from all of our talks, we understand that that's probably in the near term. Pope Francis, with Laudato Si and the 5-year anniversary of the encyclical Care for the Common Home last year, had called for enhanced stewardship. It caused Catholic investment services to really take a look at our fossil fuel exposure and divest from fossil fuels. But Scott, can you stick to sort of the Vatican theme and your experience and sort of the new guidance that we're starting to see come out of the Vatican, and just what that experience might be like?
Yeah, Pope Francis has taken a more active role in some of these conversations now, particularly the last couple of years. I think Laudato Si was a brilliant document because it wasn't prescriptive in that, oh my gosh, we have to divest of hydrocarbons overnight. It actually acknowledged that the world wasn't ready for that. That we have I mean, my gosh, think of emerging markets like China and India and sanitation, and I mean, it would be a disaster, right? So there was definitely a strong message in there that this is something we needed to work toward and embrace, but it wasn't going to happen overnight. And so I think it was very well done. And it's been a great guide for people. I mean, look, the big energy companies, the big multinationals are spending the most money on research in renewables. So we need to partner with them, as the Vatican has done. There's been a couple of 2, maybe 3 conferences in Rome the last 3 years with the executives of the major energy companies. And they've all signed on to this charter to work toward this together. So I think it's great. I mean, they're partnering with the Holy See, and it's a great spirit. And I think they believe it. And I think they really do. They have shareholders too. They have to, there's a balance here. But if you look at the amount of new drilling, and it's way, way off. I mean, way off. So it's happening. It's really starting to happen. And so I think it's great. I'm anxious to see the rewrite of the USCCB guidelines. I'm not familiar with where exactly the bishops are in that, but I'm guessing there'll be some changes reflecting some of the new guidance from the Holy See. And I think the Holy See would do well to come out with a statement on social responsibility as it relates to investing that's also more comprehensive. And I bet they will at some point. I bet they will.
Zayla, maybe we can take a pause and see what sorts of questions we're getting from the audience.
Definitely. And by the way, for the audience, feel free to ask questions in the Q&A button section, or you can also ask in the chat section. There's a question about China. And Scott, you've traveled so many times to China and you have great experience investing there. I think the question is, how can one invest in China with all the abuses going on right now against the Uyghurs and all sorts of other things? And would love your thoughts in general about China and any comments you have about.
Yeah, so when we started investing, at least at Notre Dame, when we started investing in emerging markets in the early 90s, I actually did a survey of a number of economists and theologians, and luckily I have a lot of those on campus. And so it was fairly easy for me to do that. But I also talked to some theologians at other institutions just to get a broad array of viewpoints. And the number one theme, and there was nothing really close second, was economic empowerment is the best way to get people out of poverty. And ultimately that wealth will lead to more democratic systems. I mean, there's a whole history of this in the world. And so that was very compelling to me. It was also, we thought some of these markets might really be a great investment opportunity. And it turns out China did become a tremendous investment opportunity. And they had a lot of reforms. And by the way, they have upgraded their, what we call our OSHA rules, the labor policies, labor rules. They've advanced those dramatically. There's been a number of enhancements in terms of human rights and worker rights and other things. It's hard to just zero in on one thing. I think that's very difficult. So the GDP per capita in China has gone from like $100 a person, maybe a couple hundred, to probably 15,000. That's a tremendous increase for over 1 billion people. I think the US is like 50,000, 55,000. So we're still quite a bit above that. We have a smaller population, but quite a bit above that. So I've been encouraged in the opportunities the people of China now have for education and economic empowerment. It's 300, 400 million people have moved into the middle class. That's a good thing. And by the way, they're also becoming more spiritual. They're yearning for religion. There's various, there's a transition going on. I think at some point, the Catholic Church will be much more prominent in China. They now have this patriotic Catholic Church of China that has priests and cathedrals and all. And I don't know if all of them are technically under the Pope, but they do the same rituals and they yearn for spirituality. And I think that's great. But some of those issues are difficult, and I think it's something we have to monitor. And ultimately, look, if things really do get that severe, that bad and out of line, then I think people will pull their investment. And it's not something you just do carte blanche and never revisit. It's something that we would look at, and others would have to look at as well. So it's a good question. I think something to monitor.
Definitely. And it's such a global world, right?
Absolutely.
Look what's happening in India, it's crazy right now. There's a question about if somebody, let's say an organization has 50 to 20 million in endowment assets, you've managed money for, $14 billion is what the Notre Dame endowment was when you left it last year. How should these smaller organizations, deal with their investments, and how should they get organized? How do you manage? What's the best
Well,
way
see,
to manage
that's a classic.
side?
Yeah, that's a classic size that that we started the company for. They're now all in solutions to handle those kind of assets. We have what, Jeremy, 20 something underlying managers in Catholic Endowment Fund.
Yep.
That order. So you're getting a broad diversification through one fund. You see one fund, you come in, but you got this array of managers and equities, in hedge funds, diversifiers, in bonds. So it's a nice structure. It's getting quality managers in there. So that's why I was saying earlier, there is product now that is much more satisfactory for those size funds, and this is a perfect product for them. I think people use Vanguard for smaller assets, and that's fine for traditional low cost investing. But again, you're not solving that problem with 60-40 in bonds, that people just really want a little more diversification now, I think. And that's why we've tried to solve for. Look, you can either build a team, you're going to sort of buy or build, right? Investing, you're going to build an internal team, or you're going to buy expertise. And so obviously most Catholic groups are going to buy some expertise, having a consultant in many cases to help them pick managers, or manage it for them, or an OCIO approach, or something like Catholic Investment Services that combines the Catholic screens plus the outstanding investment managers.
Well said, Scott. There's a question about your time. You're on the board of the Vatican, and folks want to know a little bit about your experience there. Anything you can share? What you've learned?
Oh yeah, no, it's been outstanding, and it's been a tremendous blessing for me. I went on the board of the Vatican Bank in 2014. It was right after Pope Francis had done a number of reform commissions to evaluate some of the financial management structures of the Holy See, and ultimately decided to keep the bank but reformulate some of its statutes. And so the current board, which has been in place since then, it's been very stable. It's an excellent global board. There's 6 of us. I'm the only American, but it's a really dedicated, fabulous group of professionals, all have some sort of financial background, which is really important. And we've been working through a plan to enhance our safeguards and controls. We have full transparency. We audited financials now for 8 or 9 years. We have modern international standards for complying with anti-money laundering requirements, know your customer type things, so all international standards. Moneyvale just was in, which is sort of a European run, but global group that assesses your adherence to, like AML, for example, anti-money laundering. And we passed in all that at the bank. So it's been tremendous, and it's slow progress. Things don't happen overnight, of course. The culture in Italy is very different than the US, and then you overlay church culture, and it takes time. But I'm very encouraged by the progress we've made. And the Pope has been incredibly supportive of our work, and it takes every opportunity to tell us that. So it's been very rewarding.
They're lucky to have you, Scott. Jeremy, did you have a question on ESG that you wanted to ask? Maybe like we keep getting asked environmental, social government questions when we're talking to our investors. Scott, anything on that subject that you would like to
I would say
opine on?
the Catholic Church has been sort of responsibly investing for 150 years. And now you see some, Wall Street kind of, marketing ESG or responsible investment, impact investment, positive inclusion, integration, all these different terms. How do you get your head around sort of this space and a practitioner's outlook?
Yeah, it's a good question because I think there's some confusion out there. ESG is a well-intentioned initiative, but unfortunately, a lot of it was just commercialized by the investment banks to make money, and the metrics being used in many cases aren't even they're not even measuring the kinds of things that you'd really want to look at in environmental or social policies or governance. I mean, the governance stuff is much more established, right? There's a little clear sense of what proper governance structures look like in organizations. There's a lot of expertise there, a lot of case studies. The social and environmental is a little tougher to measure, particularly the social part. So I love the initiative. I just think that we need some time to get the metrics right. And by the way, I haven't seen any academic study yet that says that based on the current metrics, that highly rated ESG companies do better. So, in fact, a recent study came out showing that the reason, if they have done better, it's mainly because of the quality of the company and the assets, and the management, and not necessarily some of these other things. So I think it's evolving. I don't think it's in conflict with what we're trying to do with Catholic social teaching. I think it meshes, but let's just not take this commercial product and sort of assume it fits. So we're continuing to monitor that, incorporate it in selectively. Same with impact investing. There's a time when impact investing mainly meant social projects, really no worry about a financial return. As a fiduciary, we can't do that. So as I said earlier, now we're seeing projects that do combine both and are attractive in both measures. So that's great. And at CIS, we'll continue to monitor all of those social initiatives and incorporate them as appropriate. Absolutely.
So maybe one last question before we wrap things up, Jeremy. Given the low yield environment, I know we talked a little bit about it, but what would you tell Scott people who are still in that 60-40 range, and given what's going on right now, any advice you have for them?
Well, I think we talked about this a bit already. I mean, just in terms of, I think probably having a little more diversification, particularly in the bond piece, would be prudent given where rates are. Not necessarily taking more risk. There are ways to do that without taking more risk, but just diversifying a bit more this would be a good time to do that. I also believe in keeping it simple and not, we don't want to overcomplicate things that they don't understand what they have. So keeping it simple, but some diversification at this point would be prudent. Bill, do you have any other good words for us before we sign off?
No, I think folks have hopefully have learned quite a bit from your experience, Scott. I know I have, and continue to. God bless you for the work that you're doing with the Vatican Bank, and I'm sure other organizations. Now that you are officially retired from Notre Dame, I joke, Scott, I'm older than you are, and I'm still working, and you're retired. So what does that say, right? So
Well, I'm just thrilled that Bill was willing to do this with us and have a group of Florida Catholic groups involved in the call today. So thanks to all of you out there, and let us know if we can help you in any way.
Thanks again to our great panel for a very valuable program. If you have any questions, please email me at jtaylor@catholicinvest.org. Thank you to our audience for participating today, joining us. Have a great day.
God bless you all. Thank you, Bill.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.